Welcome back to the Light-Minded podcast. Today in studio we have Ed Lester, who is the founder of Transformational Coach, life coaching and New Zealand School of Professional Hypnotherapy. His mission is to challenge the status quo of deficit theorizing. He grew up in a world obsessed with working on weaknesses, giving children negative labels and installing feelings of lack and self-doubt in them. In 1985, he had a chance encounter with a hypnotherapist in his own hometown of Swindon, England. And this life-changing meeting sent him on a path of discovering the secret of our subconscious source code. As a result, his goal has become to help people discover their hidden gifts and passions. And with over 25 years of experience as a coach, mentor, and entrepreneur, Ed has helped thousands of people around the world break through their limiting beliefs and overcome their fears and achieve their goals. So welcome, Ed. We're so pleased to have you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
I personally have experienced Ed's magic. It was about a year ago, actually, I did a course with you, which was NLP Strategic, here in Christchurch.
Yep.
And what I found mind-blowing in that week, which I was reflecting on as I was driving here, and this is where we'll tap into this whole source code thing,
Yep.
is that within that week, I was like fully booked for the next couple of months. Like my business just started to soar.
Yep.
And I put it down to that week and I was like, what happened? And I noticed there was a real energy shift within myself. But if you can kind of maybe give us a little bit of background of that source code and what that means, and perhaps even how you came to discover it.
It's a very common story. I think, you opened up, you mentioned about deficit theorizing, and it's a big jargony word, whatever. But the idea is that we're obsessed culturally. We're obsessed with people's weaknesses and what's broken in them, and an awful lot of, and sometimes you have to kind of go in that direction to fix something where someone's got a real problem, but often we invent problems. We create this idea that something's broken when it's really not. A lot at the moment's talked about attention deficit disorder. When I was at school, there was no such thing, or certainly it wasn't something that was known about. But I go online and I do these tests, find out if you're ADD or find out if you're ADHD, and I score like the highest possible score. It's very, very clear to me that I'm, 101% ADD. And when I look back, I remember looking back at my school time and thinking, there was something wasn't quite right. Something was really unpleasant about school. I did not enjoy school at all. Except certain clues as to things which later in my life would be positive for me, like commerce, economics, art, history. Certain little clues for things I did enjoy, but 99% of the time I didn't enjoy it. And then looking back years later, I heard about this ADHD thing, and I started watch something on TV about it, and I was like, wow, that sounds really familiar. This idea of all this noise going on in your head all the time and being pulled off in a million different directions. And when it's talked about now, ADHD, it's always talked about like it's this problem, someone's got something they need to fix. But actually, when you look at it on, we talk about source code, you look at it on a source code level, Einstein was definitely ADHD. A lot of creative people, a lot of people that have visions and big ideas, they spend a lot of their time head in the clouds, lost. You think about that at school, when your head's in the clouds and you're lost in your thoughts, you tend to be in trouble. You tend to be, getting told off by the teachers. Concentrate, look at the blackboard, look at the whiteboard, concentrate on what I'm saying. And when your mind works that way, you're not very good at concentrating on what other people are saying. You're too busy with your own thoughts. So I guess what I'm saying is something that was really negative and really interfered with me progressing well at school. Years later, I realized, wow, that's actually my superpower. That's what I'm good at. And I think a lot of kids today are told, this is a real problem, and not just ADHD, anything that makes you different, any kind of neurodivergence or different way of thinking or unique ability, unique way of being. We're programmed to think that that's a problem that needs to be fixed. And a lot of the time it's more about how can we use this, how can somebody use their unique way of being who they are? How can they unlock that and actually leverage it and use it to create positive outcomes? And I think probably you experienced some of that, Beck. I mean, people come on my trainings, they walk away, they have their best week ever business-wise or productivity-wise, creativity-wise, often because they've really looked at the world from a 180-degree shift, as in, hang on a minute, maybe nothing's broken here, maybe actually it's the other way round, maybe there's something that needs to be elevated and focused on and brought into the light, as it were, and nothing's actually broken. And I think that's true with people. People aren't as broken as they think. In fact, I don't think people are broken. I think they're just full of amazing potential, and it sits under the surface. And source code is really about kind of getting in there and finding that potential and unlocking it, which is really exciting. You know, if someone's stubborn, for instance, and they're told, you know, here's a clue for anybody listening and, you know, and watching now. When you think back to your childhood and you think back through the different patterns in your life, the things that you were probably told were your weaknesses, the things you were teased for or picked up on, probably are really good signposts to your biggest strengths. So for me, you never concentrate. You just don't concentrate. You're always having a million different ideas. You know, that was my old school report said Ed doesn't concentrate, doesn't focus. But actually, that's what I was good at, was not focusing, was focusing on different things or focusing on lots of different things at the same time. If someone's told they're stubborn, that probably means or obstinate, they're probably just not doing what they're told at school, but actually maybe that stubbornness is what's going to set them apart, you know, in later life.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this
Means that they're going to keep working at their goal and keep going until they achieve it.
I'm a crazy optimist, and I could say, well, everybody should be optimistic. If you're not optimistic, there's no hope. You know, nothing's going to happen. But actually, pessimism is a source code as well. And some people, you know, I'm not saying it's a negative thing, but some people have to be pessimistic. They have to see the worst. They have to see the problems because, you know, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm getting on an aeroplane or something, I want to know that a pessimist has had a good look around and made sure that everything's working properly, and thought about everything that could go wrong and safety checked it, you know.
That's
risk
true.
assessment and risk management, they are good pessimistic source code occupations.
Definitely.
But it's not for me. I can't deal with pessimism. I need, you know, very optimistic to a stupid level, actually. So yeah.
But we love that about you.
Yeah,
We're always
yeah.
talking about that and how optimistic you are.
I took that, and with that course, I flipped the program really around looking in the direction of where you want to be going, like in that optimistic direction more so. And I really relate to the school reports. I found mine the other day and I was reading them, and they were all around like, Rebecca has terrible concentration, like she's away in the clouds, like very much. And so I can just really relate to everything you're saying, because now it's very much like was a really important element, but at school it wasn't the right thing. But you can apply it in different ways and you know, different aspects in your life, which that's kind of the magic, eh?
Absolutely. I mean, I always, you know, the famous cases that come to mind, always the same, you know, like, you know, Richard Branson was always told, you know, be more serious, stop joking all the time, or you're never going to come to anything. And his whole brand was built around fun and you know, having, you know, enjoying yourself. Oprah was told she wasn't going to make it in the media industry because she was too soft, and you know, soft, but you know, change that for empathetic. She's actually made her career out of being empathetic to other people and caring about the people. So it's really interesting how you can buy into all of this stuff, you know. And a lot of it's affirmations, you know. I talk about affirmations. A lot of people think of affirmations as telling yourself something that's not true and keep saying it until it becomes true. I don't think it could be further from the truth. You know, if you start with truth in affirmations, you start to program your thinking and your internal operating system with truth, and from truth comes power. I really believe that. So people say, you know, they're starting from this point of I'm not good enough, or I'm not sure if I'm capable of doing this, and they change that to I am good enough. And they're saying I'm good enough, but they don't believe it deep down, and so there's this energetic conflict. But as soon as you change it to, you know, okay, at the moment I don't feel good enough, but I'm going to change this. This is going to change it. You start to build truth, and your whole programming shifts. You know, like I had an idea for that, but you know, it'll come back to me. There goes the ADHD.
That's so true. That's 100% how I approach it when I'm working with birth clients. So instead of, you know, I'm going to lose control, because that's something I always hear, I'm worried about losing control. What can we be in control of? I can be in control of my breath. So it's like almost changing the script to make it work around what can we strengthen that belief around.
And I think something I was listening to some videos of yours earlier, and I think something you also talked about was connecting with that heart space as well. So having that really clear intention or belief that you want to shift, but also that connection with your heart and that elevated emotion. I think Joe Dispenza talks about that as well, like having a clear intention with an elevated emotion.
He does. Joe Dispenza does talk about that, and Joe Dispenza says some really cool stuff. Like, in his meditations, he'll say stuff like, "Don't when you open your eyes and you come back into the real world, don't waste it. Don't waste what you've done here. Don't waste the opportunity for change or transformation." I'm paraphrasing what he does, but it is. I mean, every day, every moment, we've got this opportunity to shift, and any changes that we make, they always happen really quickly. They happen instantaneously, and often it's like the golfer who wins a big golf tournament with someone say you had a lucky putt, or one putt and you've got millions of dollars prize money. It's like there's so much that leads up to that moment. There's all the practicing and all the other rounds and all the other shots, just so you can have that one shot that wins you the competition. On the affirmation side, the heart thing's really interesting actually. On the affirmation side, people say, fake it till you make it. I was just writing about this morning, so it's just front of mind, but fake it till you make it. I mean, how awful an affirmation is that to give to somebody? So you've got to go into this heart space, as you say, or this energy space of being fake. That's unbelievable, because nobody wants to be fake. Some people probably do, but again, it's how we frame it. I guess if you're an actor and you want to play a role, you're not that person, so that's fake. But it's not the right word, is it? It's more about you're playing a role, you're growing into the role, you're becoming a new person. That's such a much nicer energy, source code wise, much nicer energy than fake it till you make it, which is like, I've got to be fake. What an awful affirmation to have. I am authentically becoming everything I always wanted to be. That's a much nicer affirmation. And if you get that programming language into your self-talk and visualizations and everything else, it's really powerful. And the heart space thing, people don't know, it's becoming more, people are becoming more aware of thinking through your heart. The heart's got a brain. The heart does actually have a brain. I know it sounds bizarre if you've never encountered that before, but we, our neurology, or our thinking space exists within our stomachs, in our hearts, and in our brains. And the brain is the least powerful of all of those, really, when it comes to creating change. I know for a fact I can have a client or a student or someone I'm working with, and they can spend an awful lot of time in their head thinking, and they're telling themselves, I'm going to sort this out. I'm going to work out in my brain what to do, and then I'm going to change what I do. I'm going to do something different. But the instant they shift to heart thinking and they start thinking through their heart, like, what do I really want to do here? What's the next step? It almost leads instantaneously to breakthroughs. Whereas you can think yourself around in circles.
And when you were saying just earlier about, say, an affirmation like trying to convince yourself I'm good enough, I remember on the strategic course we were talking about the fact that sometimes we don't want to be good enough at certain things. So there was a story that you told, and hopefully you're okay that I'm sharing this, is that you had people round for a barbecue and the cat door broke.
Yes, I remember the incident, but I can't remember the context of it.
Yeah, so the cat door broke, and you were like, oh, don't worry about it, I'll fix it on Monday or something like that. And then everyone was laughing, like, of course Ed's not going to fix it, well, we'll get somebody in to do that. And so it was kind of that idea around, well, maybe that's not in your source code, right? So that's not something you're going to outsource for that to get somebody to do it. And it kind of comes to the same with, sports and stuff. Like, I'm terrible at surfing, right? But I don't want to be good at surfing.
Yes, so does it matter?
I want to be good at other things. So it's like remembering the things that you are good at and good enough at that you can use that.
But what you really want to know, Beck, what you really want to know is what you're world class at. What can you be the best in the world at?
And how do you discover that?
You already know deep down. This is the thing. It's not the thing. So there's two aspects to source code. If we kind of dimensionalize them, one of the things there with source code is it's so important to know what you're not good at and what you hate. You don't want to be good at. We live in a world where we go for a job interview and the job interviewer says, "Can you tell me what your weaknesses are?" Drives me crazy. I'm like,
so true.
Yeah. So if the job, say if I was going for a job as an accountant, which again, that would not be my source code, but let's say I went for a job as an accountant and the interviewer said, what are your weaknesses? And I said, cooking. They'd be like, no, what are your weaknesses towards this job? It's like, there's no weaknesses towards this job. That's why I'm applying for this job. My weaknesses are in other areas, which is why I want to do. I think that they should be interested in your strengths. Like, what are you really good at? What do you bring to this organisation that we don't have at the moment? What are you really world class at? And it's not just the thing. It's what. So let's take an example of that. So cookery. Some people are really good at cooking. I'm a pretty good cook. But my source code is not precision, planning, detail at all. Quite the opposite. My source code is much more go into the kitchen, grab a few ingredients, see what's going on, throw them all together, make something. And it usually turns out okay. So my source code is really winging it.
Yes,
Winging it, yeah.
Showing up and see what happens.
A lot of my biggest successes that I've had in my life, right through my life, you should always be looking for patterns with source code. And a lot of the patterns for me are the things that went well were when I just got up, did something, and then polished it afterwards. Whereas some people, their source code is they got to get it perfect first of all. And of course, there's no perfect, but some people have to do a lot of planning. If you've studied Colby, for example, there's this idea of fact finding. Some people have to go and research, get all the facts, get all the information, then they can make a decision and then they take action. I am much better what's called the D-Day strategy, where you just march in and do it and see what happens. And if you're still standing, great, what do we do next? And you can, once you've got an idea of source code there in terms of the deeper truth, then you can use that in different situations. So if you know that you're much better being spontaneous, now if you've got to go and do a presentation like here today, I don't have a plan today, I don't have any notes, or I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I trust you guys to ask me some questions and we'll see what comes out, But some people, they couldn't do that. They need to have notes. They need to plan out, this is my this is the structure for today. And if they didn't have that structure or a PowerPoint presentation or whatever, they'd run a mile.
Yeah.
Whereas if you said to me, you've got to, I remember giving a talk once and they made me do PowerPoint presentation. That's kind of okay, but they made me hold one of those clickers and I had to click and go through the slides and stand in a certain place, and I just didn't want to be there. I was like, I need to get out of here as soon as possible because it's not my source code.
Yeah.
Knowing what's not your source code leads you to what is. And people say, I don't know what my purpose is in life. Quickest way to get your purpose in life is often to know what's not your purpose in life, If you're not happy, if you're doing something that you're not happy about, that's not your purpose. Yeah. Simple as that.
So source code is really all about authenticity.
Yeah, and I'm following that heart center, as Kylie said, it's like following that, not just intuition. If I'm very intuitive as my source code, so again, that fits if you think about it with the not planning too much. I'll trust my intuition and I'll go with that, and sometimes it doesn't work, but 9 times out of 10 it does. And the thing with intuition is the more you use it, the better you get at it. And the more you draw on real world learnings and wisdom, the more you become intuitive. But some people, that's kind of their source code. Again, some people, that does not suit them, that's not their source code. So telling them to be intuitive is actually a silly thing to say, because they don't want to do that. They want to be analytical. They want to really work it all out. So, your purpose in life is to be happy. Your purpose in life is to be doing work, living a life where you're in flow and you're really enjoying yourself. And you're like, this is what I was born to do. I think most people would admit that deep down. That's where they want to get to that place of, it's not about doing work, it's about doing something that makes you feel like I'm really enjoying this. This feels like I was meant to do it. I seem to have a bit of an edge here. I seem to be able to get into flow quite easily. Like time stands still. It's effortless. That means you're in your purpose as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And what do you say to those people that might say, well, that's great, Ed, but following my purpose and doing things that light me up aren't going to make me money?
Yeah.
I can't do that for a living.
Prove it.
Prove it.
Yeah. I mean, everybody I know who personally, people that I've connected with who've made lots of money, are either deeply, deeply unhappy and actually really scared they're going to lose all their money, or they need more, or they're still not secure. They still haven't fixed whatever it is they were trying to fix in the first place. But that's actually probably the exception. Mostly the people I've met in my world that have done really well, financially, career-wise, they've really enjoyed what they've done. They've tapped into something that's really excited them. And I think you see that with people like Oprah. Oprah's a great example. She was the richest woman in the world, I think, for a long time, or she was certainly, right up there in the rich list and the most famous woman in America or the world. And she was clearly at that point doing what she loved doing. And I think sometimes it's when people stop doing what they love doing that things don't go so well. Seeing it with Elon Musk at the moment, I clearly certain aspects of what he's doing are not going as well as they were. And, you just kind of wonder, has he moved from his source code in some ways? Is he not doing what he was born to do? Is he not enjoying himself as much as he used to? I don't know. But when, the analytical side of me looks at the results and says, well, if the results aren't good, maybe something's not quite right inside the black box.
Yeah.
We need to change some inputs, change some ways of doing things. So I'd be chatting with Elon and saying, come on, are you really in your source code on a daily basis, or have you got yourself into a situation where you're not doing the things you're passionate about doing, or you're not allowed to do it in the way you want to do it? Sometimes happens in business where people's businesses grow to a level where they lose control and or they lose sight of the original vision. And a lot of visionary type people, source code wise, they're good sprinters, they're great at starting things, but then when they get to the point where it's same day in, day out, they've really lost who they were in that. And so you kind of have to shake it up a bit. Steve Jobs was great for that. He always said he wanted Apple to be the biggest startup in the world. He never wanted that organization to lose sight of the excitement of new things, new ideas, always being entrepreneurial and creative every day. And that was cool.
He used to always ask himself a question every day as well. He used to look at himself in the mirror and he would say, if this was the last day that I was going to live, would I be happy with what I was going to be doing for the day? And you could say that that's almost pessimistic in some ways.
Yeah.
But
there was an aspect to that.
It's kind of powerful because it's like, okay, well, no, I'm not happy, so I'm going to change something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And the thing with Steve Jobs that I relate to, that I love it, and being ADD, it's all about this noise in your head. I think you're always thinking about different things, and it's a noisy place. The thing with Steve Jobs is that his answer to a lot of that was what was called radical simplicity, and I love that. And everything I teach, I try and come from a place of how can I make this really simple for people, because there's a lot of people, I think in academia maybe often it's symptomatic, where they make things really, really complicated because it justifies what they do, and I think actually it's so refreshing to take something that was really complicated and have it explained in a way you're like, wow, is that really all that's really all it is? That's really all it comes down to.
Yeah.
So a great example of that Steve Jobs thing was when he'd been sacked from Apple and he came back. He was the last resort. They were apparently days away from bankruptcy, and they brought back in Steve. Can he save the company? The first thing he did was he said, well, look, you've got 20 or 30 different product lines going on here. Let's just stop that. Let's just have 4 things. Let's have a home computer, a laptop, a handheld device, what have you, a power computer for power users. So it was basically, we just have these 4 things and let's start with that. Whereas a lot of people would be, no, let's have lots more ideas of what we can do to create some revenues or some success. And I kind of think if he was sitting down with Elon Musk now, he might say to him, come on, Elon, let's simplify things. You're doing all this different stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what's the one thing you're most passionate about? And I think, all your listeners here should be asking themselves that question. If, it's not that you have to only do one thing in your life, but if you could only do one thing, what's really going to light you up? What's going to absolutely, if you could only do one thing for the rest of your life every day, what would you do that you would never get bored of? You'd always be excited to go to do it. You'd always be top energy. You'd always feel that you could do a good job and enjoy yourself. And that's that kind of self-questioning, like with the mirror exercise that you mentioned, that kind of self-introspection and self-awareness and honesty that's what leads to overcoming this conflict of, I want to do something that I love, but on the other hand, I need to make money. That's how you get to the solution. Now, if I want to do something that I love, that's also going to, bring in enough money or success for me as well.
Do you find that with your clients, often you'll end up in those kind of situations where they'll have a lot going on, there'll be heaps, and then it's kind of streamlining it as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
And a big coaching question You know, I studied for years, I studied something called the theory of constraints, which is a business kind of theory, but based on manufacturing. But it's actually a beautiful theory that you can bring into personal development and professional development, human psychology. And it's this idea there's always one thing that's blocking you. There's always one thing. And if you can, everybody's got a bottleneck. Like on a river, when all the logs get jammed, the log jam, it's like there's one log. You move that log, everything starts to flow down the river again. And I really believe that about people. Everyone's got a block. Everyone's got a bottleneck in their life. This one thing that if they fix, everything will start to flow. And you know, that Apple example of let's stop having 20 or 30 different products. Let's have 4 computers. That releases the bottleneck. Everything starts to flow. And then you get another bottleneck. Fine. One of the things I think for people to focus on is having better problems. And if you're trying to do too much and you're focusing on the thing that you're world class at, the thing you can be world class at, source code stuff, and you focus in on that, that can release the energy, that gets you moving. Suddenly you start doing, rather than procrastinating and getting stuck, you start saying to yourself, what am I excited about? What would I enjoy doing today? Just do that. Just do that. Look at the 20 things on your whiteboard list of things to do, cross out 19 and leave the one that really excites you, and do that. That's a good starting point. That releases a bottleneck, a log jam. And like I said, you know, I was trying to say that one of the big things as humans is to have better problems. So if someone's struggling to pay the rent, someone's struggling to pay their bills, and you say, look, one day you're going to have the problem of having lots of money and you're going to want to invest it, and you're not going to know how to invest, or you're not going to understand how to invest, or whatever, and people are going to be like, that's ridiculous, I'd love to have that problem, that would be a great problem. It's like, yeah, so how do we get you to the place where you have that problem? It's not necessarily a great example, but think about the problems, the biggest problems in your life today, and think about problems you'd like to have. Because everybody's got problems, and you know, everybody's got that bottleneck. There's always that next challenge, that next block. How can we get upstream so that it's a better block?
Yeah, that picture of the analogy of the upstream really, I can really connect with that in so many different ways. And I think that was something that we utilised.
You see it in business growth all the time. Like I don't know who your audience is specifically, you know, to tap into. Like, but if you've got entrepreneurs and business owners who are listening, you know, it's really clear to people in that world that you start a business with certain problems, getting clients, you know, attracting clients, getting started, what have you. But you wait till you've got a problem where you've got lots of staff or lots of bigger things happening. As they say, you know, when you grow a business, all you do is you get new problems that have got more zeros on the end of them. That's all that happens. Problems don't go. You know, but to someone who started a new business who just wants to get their first clients or get some exposure, it's really hard to imagine those bigger problems. But if you start affirming to yourself, well, I'm going to have those one day.
So when you're in this kind of space yourself, so if you have those problems within your own business and what you're doing, how do you approach that? Because obviously,
with joy.
Yeah, I was about to say, because I know that you are like an optimist and very much so. So you actually kind of, I heard this expression once. Actually, my husband uses it all the time, and he always says, you know, nothing's really a problem. We just have to find the solution.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was a really good way to be able to approach things, because it kind of flips the script of like looking in the direction you want to go. Yeah. And that optimistic kind of, you know, a way to approach things.
That's really cool. And you can look at people who are undoubtedly and proven to be successful and look at what they do, you know, taking that analogy to the next step. So Henry Ford, who I know is not everyone's cup of tea as a historical figure, was undoubtedly very successful and changed how things were done in his industry and industry in general. And one of the things that he famously said was, I don't have any big problems. When I find a big problem, what I've really got is 20 or 30 small problems. And I solve those 20 or 30 small problems, and hey presto, the big problem's solved. You know, again, I've paraphrased it, but that's what I get from it. And I think it's really important. Like, I do something with clients called cloud work, and I've taught you this stuff, Beck, I think, where you really do look for the problems, because when you find where someone's really stuck energetically, sadness, procrastination, you know, low motivation, low self-confidence, any of that kind of stuff, you know, lack of clarity, you find that negative thing that heart-wise is stopping them, and we just look the other side of the cloud. You know, only an optimist would say that, but we look for the silver lining. But what is the 180-degree shift of that? So if someone's stuck, what do they want to be? They want to be flowing or free or cruising. Great. So we work on that energetic shift, and that's what we shoot for. But if you don't know what the problem is, you don't know what you're actually looking for.
Yeah.
Someone says to me, I'm sad. I say, great. So you want to be happy? Let's get cracking on that. You know, what's the next step?
So sorry.
I was just going to say.
That's the
Can you
deficit
stop
thing.
talking?
That's the deficit theorizing again versus like, I'm sad, therefore there's a problem to solve.
Yeah.
No, there's not a problem to solve. There's an opportunity of being happy that we, as a coach or a change facilitator, we can now work on how do we, you know, you do not have, one minute you've got 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 sadness on a subjective level. But now if you shift that around, you've now got happiness. I might say, well, how happy are you? 1 out of 10. Well, that's okay. 1 out of 10 is a good starting point. Now we can go to 2 and 3 and 4. And that's the shift.
And when you create that, like you say, moving out of that energy of sadness into a different space, the solutions just start to naturally drop in anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think Einstein talked about that you can't find the solution from the same level of mind that, you know, created the problem.
Exactly. So you walk into a different room, and when you walk into that different room, at first it's unfamiliar and it's new and you don't feel at home there, but at least you're in the room. Now we can start doing whatever we need to do.
Yeah.
So a big part of how you approach work with clients is from that energetic level, really, isn't it?
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
The heart level and the energetic level, which is interconnected.
And from an abundance perspective of just simply that if somebody wants to make a positive change in their life and they're thinking they'll change a couple of percent or a few percent, they'll make a bit of a change, and they'll, you know, especially from the deficit perspective again of there is a problem I need to fix, it becomes overwhelming, it becomes too much, and you're fighting against the tide and you're trying to create these little changes and you just get pulled back like an elastic band, you know, again and again. Whereas if you shoot for something a lot bigger, if you think about, well, what do I really want, not how do I fix this problem, but in the ideal world, if I was living my best life and really excited and enjoying myself, what would that look like? What would that feel like? And let's go for that, because now you've probably got to improve several 100%. Okay, but that's actually easier, because the only way you can improve your life by hundreds of percent is to change what you do completely. You can't work harder, you know, you can't fight more, you can't put in more effort, because those things will just burn you out, and they're just, again, they're just pulling you back. But if you actually change fundamentally who you're going to be as a person, that gets really exciting. That kind of energetic shift it pulls you into a different place.
And a tool that we did as well was around stepping into the energy of X, Y, Z. So, for example, you might want to have tenacity if you say don't have that, for instance. And so you think of somebody that's got tenacity.
Yep.
And it's almost like you step into that energy and become that. Yeah. Do you want to talk through that a little bit more to the listeners of how you know we can actually take on those specific energies and make them our own?
Totally. Yeah. So I think in our education system and in the way that we are brought up and developed, we put up with a lot of average, mediocre stuff. We really, you know, it's almost like we've got to learn, if we're sad, and I know I'm using that as a very broad energy, but the energy of sadness or unhappiness, whatever, it's like to fix that, we have to be a bit less unhappy. We've got to take a pill or a potion or read a book or something that is going to teach us not to be so sad. Whereas actually, from an efficiency perspective, the best solution is to think about who's the happiest person in the world, and let's start thinking about what they've got to say about it. What would they do? You know, what would that person do? There's no point, you know, I was watching the Arnold Schwarzenegger program. Again, doesn't matter if he's your cup of tea or not. The guy was really successful, not just in one field, but in several fields. And everything he decided to do, when he made a decision, I'm going to do that, number one, he did it his own way, used his source code. But number two, he became really good at it, like really good. And so with bodybuilding, that for instance, which I know nothing about, there's no way he became the number one in the world by modeling or copying someone who was okay at it. No way. He would have looked at who is the best, who's the best of all time at that, and what can I learn, not necessarily or not just analytically, logically, but how they think, how their energy is moving around, how, what's it like to be in their world, to be that kind of person. And when you do that, when you do modelling in that way, which I think is what you're talking about, Beck, number one, you don't want to model average or mediocre, which is what we do at school. Okay, you want to model the best. Who is the best at that thing? So you want to become happier. Who's really good at being happy? Not in a fake way, but who actually is happy and it just comes naturally to them. And we know from psychology that when you want to do that, it's not linear. You want to become happy, you've got to become grateful. If you're a grateful person, if you're grateful for your life, you're grateful for everything all the opportunities, everything that's happening in your life, if you're grateful and full of hope, you'll be happy. So therefore, who's a grateful person? We can all think of people who are very grateful and very happy because they're grateful. How can I imagine that person sitting next to me now and step into their world, kind of take a deep breath, imagining stepping into that world of that person. What changes when you become that person? What changes in terms of, so you're not copying them, you're just letting some of that into your reality. What changes in terms of, how do I see the world differently? How do I perceive this world differently? And if you can take that strength from somebody else, call it modeling, like role modeling, what have you, you start to experience some of the results that they experience. There's no doubt when people progress, and you gave the example of sports, business, arts, doesn't matter. When you hang out with people that are at the top of their game in that field, things start changing inside of you. And it's not about copying, it's not about being taught, it's something else. Like a great coach doesn't just show you what to do, they really kind of live the energy for you. Yeah, they really do. So if you had the chance to hang out with the best tennis player in the world, you want to be good at tennis, let's make that assumption, and you've already got that source code in you that you love tennis, you enjoy it, you want to get better at it. If you got to spend the day with the best player in the world, the last thing you want is them teaching you how to hold the racket or how to play a shot. You don't want that, because you can get that from your local coach, tennis coach. What you want is to find out how they think, what's going on in their world, what questions do they ask themselves, what affirmations do they tell themselves, what's their belief system, what do they believe about the world. They've probably got some really cool beliefs. And as humans, people don't realize you can choose your beliefs. So if you've got a belief that's not serving you, like I'm not very good at backhands, therefore I can't win at tennis, you might find that a great tennis player just wouldn't have that belief. There's a really famous story about that with, and I can't remember the details, it's in one of those Strengths Finder books, where the Chinese ping pong team were like the best in the world. They used to win all the Olympic gold medals, and they had this one player who was really good at forehand, really bad at backhand. So rather than trying to get him to be better at backhand ping pong, they just taught him how to always get into positions with the racket or the bat, whatever, where he was always playing forehand shots. So rather than trying to play a backhand shot, he'd try and shift himself around to be able to play a forehand. And that's how you can use your source code to always win. And whatever you do is to think, how can I do this thing I want to do, but how can I do it in a way that is set up for me to win?
And I think that's another really good point as well, just around noticing who you're surrounding yourself with and the people around you, like your closest,
Absolutely.
What is it, 10 or 12 people that can really influence you.
Yeah. And it's awesome that you say that, because when I was growing up, as a kid, you wanted to find out about somebody successful, you had to go to the library, and if you were lucky, they had a book, and if not, they'd order the book in. And it was hard, especially for someone who's not a research-based person, someone who just wants everything right now. It was very difficult. But now it's awesome, because you can go on YouTube, and I can go on YouTube today if I think, right, Richard Branson inspires me, so I want some of that energy. I want some of that belief of his. I want some of that, let's screw it, let's do it energy, that's his favourite saying. I want some of that. I just go on YouTube, and I can watch him at ease, in a situation like this, just talking, sharing his wisdom, saying this is what I do. And you can be asking yourself, how can I deal with the biggest problem in my life at the moment? What would Richard Branson do, or what would Oprah do, or what would Einstein do? Well, let's go on YouTube, and you can probably find out really quickly. Not in a linear logical way, but energetically. You would watch a Richard Branson interview and you'd walk away afterwards thinking, I kind of know now what he would do. kind of got a feeling for what he would do if he was in my situation.
Yeah.
And you can get some really great ideas that way.
I remember when I first started getting into like self-improvement and personal development, and people would watch these masterclasses with these well-known coaches, and they would say things like, oh my gosh, these codes just unlocked in me and I picked up these energetic codes, and I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's kind of what you're referring to, that it's not always just about what they're saying and the steps to take, but it's the energy of them that you're picking up on and embodying.
Yeah, and it's another really great source code exercise for people is to do that, to ask yourself, who do you resonate with? You know, when you think about what you do in your life, who are your role models? Who are the people that really inspire you? People you kind of think like, they're a bit like me. Like, they're way up there, but they're just like me in some ways. So that gives you a clue as to your source code, you know, because you'll start thinking, well, what is it about them that I'm connecting with? So, you know, I've mentioned Richard Branson a couple of times. It's like, yeah, the guy's an entrepreneur. He just gets out there and does it. And there's always this lovely energy. But he's had so many challenges. I mean, you know, they nearly, you know, Virgin nearly didn't even get off the ground in the first place. And you look back at the history and think, well, you know, whenever he was winning, he was having fun. Whenever he wasn't winning, he wasn't having fun. That's his source code. So if you know what your source code is, you know, in terms of a word or a phrase, if your source code is humor and fun, and you're constantly being put in situations where you have to be very serious, you're not going to win.
True.
By the same token, if you're a very serious person and people are putting you in frivolous situations that are not funny, they're all about fun and games, you're like, no, I need to be in a different room where I can be serious.
Yeah.
And sometimes the greatest stories in the world are where two people with very different source codes come together, and that's that Gestalt thing of the, you know, the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
Like the Beatles. The Beatles, one of my favourites. There was just these different source codes that came together. Lennon and McCartney, you know, writing songs. They were two young kids from Liverpool, both rock and rollers, whatever, but the actual personalities and the energy, if you close your eyes, forget the person, just think about the energy of those two people, it was so different. But you bring it together and suddenly you've got these songs that everybody knows, famous songs, you know, that people just grew up knowing. And they've tried to recreate this by creating what were called supergroups in music. So in the 70s, they would get the best guitar player in the world, the best drummer in the world, the best keyboard player, best singer. They put them all in this band and call it a supergroup or super band. And they were never the best. I could name you lots of apparent supergroups. You wouldn't know any of their songs. You listen to it and think, yeah, it's pretty good. Technically, it's good, but the magic's not there, because the magic doesn't necessarily come from everybody being the best. It comes from everybody bringing their source code to the picture.
Yeah, that's so true. And when we were off, before we actually got on the podcast, Kylie and I were talking about this, or Kylie mentioned it, to do with the law of attraction.
Yep.
And would you say that the law of attraction is connected quite deeply with that source code?
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely,
100%. So the law of attraction, like I 100,000,000% believe in attraction, and that there's stuff out there in the universe that's so powerful and so amazing that we can't understand it. It's way beyond our comprehension, but we feel it as a power. There's energy. Now, for some people, if they're very religious or they've got definite religious beliefs, they can give a shape to that and say, you know, this fits with my religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs or whatever. But some people, it's more just energy, just the energy of the universe. There's something really powerful. It's out there. Now, in some ways, that's awesome, but it's also very limiting if you leave it at that point, because it means all the power's outside of you. Okay, which is the opposite of what I actually believe. I think that we've all got this power inside of us, and it's like we're all part of this jigsaw puzzle, but everybody is a different shape jigsaw piece. And when you're trying to be this square jigsaw piece that fits everywhere, it's just never going to work. But if you can celebrate who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you love, what you don't love, the people you love being with, the people you don't love being with, if you can get really clear on your source code energy, like who you really are, not on a logical level, on an energetic level, who are you really at your source? Suddenly there's two pieces to the picture. There's the energy out there that's coming from the universe or coming from the heavens or whatever, and then there's that source code energy inside of you that is your uniqueness, because everybody's unique. That's actually not an opinion, that's a fact. There's no two people the same, so we are all unique, not just in our hair color or how we look, but actually energetically we're all unique. Like we've all got this different radio frequency to us. Now, if you can get the energy out there from the universe and the energy inside of you, that's how the two connect, and that's how you have the best day you're ever going to have. Because it's like, otherwise, if you just try and take that energy from the universe and do something with it, it's like you don't have a circuit breaker, everything just explodes, it's too powerful, it's too much. But if you can figure out, who am I, and how can I bring the energy out there into my world to connect in a way that I can be who I am in this relationship, then that's when the law of attraction becomes an actual thing. Like it really does. Because it's an identity thing. It's like, who are you deep down? And people think that who they are today is their identity. But it might not be, because part of your identity today could be what other people have told you about yourself. Like you are, when they've bullied you, or they've teased you, or they've stereotyped you, and they've made you into this person that you now think you need to be. But actually, it's like rust, or like barnacles on an oil rig, they call it. Like, I can't remember what it's called, but you've got to get under that. You've got to when you get gold out of the ground, it's all mucky. It's ore. You've got to get all the processing. You've got to get all the stuff off of the gold so you can get to the actual gold. And I think as humans, our source code is the gold in the middle. What we think is our identity and we think is our personality is definitely a clue, definitely gives us glimpses, but there's something hidden inside. So you get that out, and then it's really funny, like you said, Beck, about you had that week where you learned probably a lot about yourself on a source code level. The next week, the universe is sending you clients.
Yeah,
it's not a coincidence. It can't be, because it happens all the time.
It was insane. It still blows my mind. And when you were talking about, I guess, language to some extent, as those voices that we can hear outside of ourselves, so meaning just, we, especially in childhood and things like that we can really take that on as that belief and take it on as truth, and that it is part of our identity. And I think most of us have probably done that. Well, all of us would have, but it's digging under that subconscious layer, or to that subconscious layer, really. Yeah.
That's what I love about hypnotherapy, is that you're going in and you're stripping away all of the conditioning, all the blocks, and getting to that true version of yourself, that authentic version of yourself, and tapping into that, and then, like you say, using it as your superpower.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you work with somebody, like say a first session, or even using the say coursework as a foundation, what would be one of the first kind of, if you were to kind of, would you be willing to lead us through a demonstration at the moment for the listeners of something that's kind of small, or that would make sense or be relative?
It's like a parallel process. It's like breathing, in that you breathe in and you breathe out. On that same, people talk about breath work, and I really get that. I think that's a really cool thing. But there's this idea that and maybe it's getting back to that Joe Dispenza idea, of don't waste the opportunities, and even a breath is an opportunity for change. When you become aware, like everybody can drive themselves crazy by thinking their way out of a problem. And what tends to happen is a year later, 10 years later, you're still thinking your way out of the same problem, maybe in a more sophisticated way, but ultimately you're still trying to solve the same problems by trying, I'll think of a solution. As soon as you go for the heart-centered idea, you really ask yourself on an energetic level, what's blocking me right now? I don't need the logical answer. I don't need the words. Just what's the feeling in my body right now? What is the feeling of frustration, or being blocked, or being stuck? Where is that feeling? You can be very creative with it. You can ask yourself, whereabouts is that feeling? What color is it? What shape is it? What is it? Got a sound or a vibration? Is it moving? Where is it? And in the out breath, you really can just let go of that. It's a crazy idea that you might have been holding on to this feeling for years and years and years. And you can actually change the color of it, change where it is in your body, move it in a different direction, make it smaller, take it from the inside and take it outside. But it comes from an affirmation or an intention of, I'm letting go of this. This is going now.
It's all very playful, isn't it?
Very playful, but it starts with the intention. I am definitely, we said about affirmations before. By the parallel process is you're going to breathe in what you actually want. So you're breathing out what you don't want, you're breathing in what you do want, and you're making all those colours and sounds, and you're making all those changes as you do it. Source code is a shortcut. Source code is like, well, what did I feel like that day in my life when I had a really great day? things were going well, I was being successful, I was in flow, I was really enjoying myself. What was that feeling like? And we bring that feeling in as we breathe out the block that we don't want. Just hopefully that's a good exercise.
Yeah,
but it's so
it's a
simple as to be
powerful tool.
disarming. People are like, that's not going to work because it's too simple. And I'm not going to do that, and it won't work, and it's not working already, so it's not working. It's like, no, go with that for a while. You're going to have some really good days.
Yeah.
If you just go with that in and out, breathing in and out idea. But the affirmation thing, to come back to that, Beck, from earlier on, if you don't feel good enough, if you feel rubbish for whatever reason, a great affirmation is, I feel rubbish. It's a great affirmation because it immediately wakes your consciousness up to, I feel rubbish today. But that's when we start moving, what we call a belief bridge. We start making a bridge from here to there, from here to where we want to be. So I feel rubbish today, but you know what? I don't deserve to feel rubbish. I deserve to feel better. It's truth.
Yeah.
And because we start chaining these steps on the bridge, because I deserve to feel better than this, I'm going to actually believe that I am going to start feeling better. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe just a little bit, but I'm going to start to change. And actually, I don't just think I'm going to start to change, I know I'm going to start to change. So I feel rubbish, but I'm already feeling some changes here. Okay, and tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I think I'm going to feel a bit better, and the next day a bit better, next day a bit better. Yeah.
So it's incremental shifts.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's very powerful.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
your subconscious mind can get behind that because it's softer
And it's true.
True.
Yeah.
It's true and it's gentle. But you can get momentum really, really quickly. I've known so many people that have held on to something for years. So good example is they've held on to something that they can't forgive themselves for, they can't forgive someone else for, and they've held on to it because if they forgive the other person, for instance, it means that the other person is right. That it's okay. It's made it okay, but it's not made it okay. Forgiveness is all about just giving yourself power by letting go of something you don't want to hold on to.
Yeah.
And I've known people that have held on to something like that for years and years and years. And because they've said, okay, I'm happy to let go of 1% of that. So would you take all that energy of the thing you're not letting go of, would you let go of 1% of it? Rather than this whole big rock on your shoulders, would you let go of one little pebble of that energy? And they'll be like, yeah, I can do that. I can let go of 1%. So they do that. And then they do another percent. And then they do another percent. And within an hour or something, they're like, screw it, I'll just let go of the whole lot.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
And suddenly somebody that's they've almost been bent over with this energy for years, it's just gone. And they're looking around like, it shouldn't be gone that easily. But it is.
Yeah. So true.
And it always happens that way.
Yeah.
Anybody in life will tell you when they've had a really big breakthrough, when something happened in their life where it changed forever, it just happened. It seemed to be very sudden.
This has been so powerful.
Yeah, it's been so great.
It's been awesome. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah.
There's so many gems in this episode. I'm going to have to go back and
That's what I was thinking. I was like, actually, I'm going to go back and then write things down.
Yeah.
Well, I hope it's
amazing.
valuable for people. I really do.
Yeah.